Welcome everybody to Forza Motorsport 7, and today we're taking a look at the 2004 Mercedes-Benz C32 AMG. Now this is part of the second generation that was produced between 2000 and 2007, given the designation W203. You could also get this car in a estate version, and yeah, it was a very limited production run of this car and the estate version, as it was only around for a year or so before it was ultimately replaced in terms of engine and therefore model name. But this is easily one of my favourite German sports saloon cars, and easily one of my favourite sports saloons in general, to be honest. And yeah, a lot of that is down to the engine, I have to say, which yeah is pretty phenomenal, to be honest. And if you know how Mercedes-Benz designate their some of their cars, the number is usually the engine size. So it's a 3.2 litre supercharged V6 engine, producing 349 horsepower and 332 pounds-feet of torque. Now, like I said, this car was ultimately replaced, and that was primarily down to the engine. But weirdly enough, despite the fact that the engine that replaced this was a 5.4 litre V8 engine, that engine only had 13 horsepower more than this. Now, granted, being a V8 engine, it had a lot more torque at 44 pounds-feet extra, but to only have 13 horsepower more when you got two extra cylinders and more than 2,200 cc's more is yeah, just shows how really good this engine is. And yeah, it's based on a normal Mercedes-Benz V6 engine, but was uprated when it got the supercharger put onto it, so it had new pistons, new crankshafts and the like of that to give it the reliability that Mercedes-Benz were generally known for. And yeah, I really do quite like it. It's not the best looking vehicle out there, but it's got everything you'd ever wish for in a Mercedes from the time period. So it's festooned with buttons and technology and equipment, everything that you'd expect from a car at that time. And yeah, it's got plenty of space in the rear and plenty of space in terms of boot space as well, as you can see. So yeah, no lacking of room there. And obviously if you wanted more room, you could get an estate version, but even that was rarer than this saloon version. And yeah, going to be comparing this against the Audi S4, which was also out at this time, also a practical four-door saloon, but quite different in certain ways, because obviously that has all-wheel drive while this only has rear-wheel drive. That had a 4.2 litre V8 engine, I think that's what it was. But yeah, even though that had again a bigger engine than this, that was 9 horsepower less than this and 30 pounds-feet of torque less as well. And because it has all-wheel drive, it also weighs in at 220 pounds more than this, as this weighs 3,605 pounds. So yeah, despite being a Mercedes, this is actually the lightweight compared to an Audi, which you certainly couldn't say these days, especially in comparison to other four-door saloons. But yeah, got a really powerful engine this car has, and yeah, the supercharger whine is really rather nice to listen to. But yeah, let's get out onto the track and see what this can do, and especially in comparison to the Audi S4. Now, it's not a complete walkover for this Mercedes-Benz over the Audi, because I think the Audi does look better than this car. It's also a more of a driver's car, because it has a manual gearbox while this only has a 5-speed automatic. And it also has a more charismatic sounding engine. I do like the sound of this engine, especially with the supercharger, but that V8 in the Audi is really rather nice sounding, and it's also higher revving as well. But this car does handle better than the Audi, even though the Audi does have all-wheel drive, which is obviously better for daily use, especially if you're dealing with inclemental weather, so snow, ice, rain, whatever like that. That car's all-wheel drive system will be the better system to go with over rear-wheel drive, especially when you're dealing with the amount of power that both of these cars has. Because even though this has a substantial amount of extra torque over the Audi, it's not got that much extra in terms of horsepower. So yeah, you really would want an all-wheel drive system for all kinds of weather conditions. But this car is fundamentally better to drive. It's got better brakes, it's got better handling, and yeah, it's also quicker in terms of straight line speed. Now again, it's not a complete walkover in terms of 0 to 60 time, as this can do 0 to 60 in 5.1 seconds, whereas the Audi can do it 5.120 seconds, so there's really not all that much in it. But that gap widens substantially when you get to 100, as this can do it in 12.2 seconds, whereas the Audi has to only do with it in 13.2, so there's a full second there. And with the rev limiter off on this car and the Audi, this has 6 mile an hour over the Audi. It can do 186 miles an hour, which is pretty damn good even by today's standards, never mind, you know, 16, well, nearly 16 years ago. So yeah, it's got the power. It's probably also the more luxurious car, though I do imagine the Audi will be better built, because even though Mercedes-Benz were known for their luxury and their equipment and everything like that, their reliability standards were slipping around this time, whereas Audis were improving. So I imagine the Audi will be, you know, more reliable, especially since it's not having to deal with a supercharger on top of that V8, whereas this obviously is dealing with a supercharger, which, you know, can be a costly thing to replace if it ever breaks. But yeah, I do prefer this over the Audi generally. Sure, it doesn't have the charismatic engine or the looks, but it's got the speed, it's got the acceleration, it's got the handling, and it's got the braking, and ultimately, if you're after a sports saloon, that's really what counts, and you really can't split them on practicality, because they both have sizable boots, they both have good rear leg room, and they've both got plenty of equipment up front, though obviously I think this certainly does have the better equipment than the Audi. But they're not faultless. As you can see, the brakes on this car are still not all that great, but they are slightly worse in the Audi. And at least because this doesn't have all-wheel drive, it's got very little in the way of understeer, whereas the Audi does understeer quite a fair bit, and it doesn't generally feel like the all-wheel drive can deal with the amount of power that it's got going on in the Audi. I felt like it was all over the place when I tested it out after trying this for a fair old while. So yeah, there's really not much to split them on, but yeah, I guess it all comes down to you know, what you like out of a car. Quite frankly, I do prefer V8 engines in most cars, but because this is just such a more, you know, thrilling car to drive because of how quick it is, and it's got that supercharger whine going as well, and slightly more enjoyable to drive around a track. Though, like I said, if you were driving these in real life, you would only have to deal with an automatic gearbox in this car, whereas with the Audi you've got a manual gearbox to really work that engine to its full potential. But yeah, it's still really good. I really do like this. It's a shame that we don't get, you know, more early 2000s Mercedes, because this is actually the only early 2000s Mercedes we've had on any Forza game, I think, especially in terms of normal road-going cars. So yeah, it is really a kind of a period, especially in terms of German cars as well, because there are a few Audis from around this period. But you know, we don't have any BMWs really from this period outside of the M5, and yeah, I just feel like it's a part of motoring history that seems to be a little bit neglected really. But yeah, I'm glad this is on this game, and yeah, I hope to see it and other Mercedes like it in future games really, because it is a really rather good car. And yeah, it's a bit of a shame that they don't really do supercharged V6s anymore really, to be honest with Mercedes. If they do, I've not heard of it, but you know, even Jaguar are doing those kind of things now, so it would be nice for Mercedes to get back into it, because yeah, it's a really, really good engine in this car, which has a lot of power for a vehicle that, for an engine that is so small in comparison to V8s. But nonetheless, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.